Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Braje Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braje Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Harinam Sankirtan Yagya ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Thank you so much for coming to the Srimad Bhagavatam class and for allowing me to speak. And thank you so much, Judy Prabhu, for coming. I feel like you should be speaking and I should be hearing. So please give me your blessings. Thank you. And I actually need all the blessings from all the devotees. Close. Okay. Oh. Okay. No whispering. Yes. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 14, verses 8 and 9. I'll just read text 8 and then we can recite text 9 together. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Aho ubayata praptam lokasya vyasanam mahat tarunya payato dipte eva taskara palayor. Translation. When the great sages consulted one another, they saw that the people were in a dangerous position from both directions. When a fire blazes on both ends of a log, the ants in the middle are in a very dangerous situation. Similarly, at that time, the people in general were in a dangerous position due to an irresponsible king on one side and thieves and rogues on the other. Text 9. Arajaka bayad esha krito raja tad arhana tatopi asid payantvadya katam shat swasti dehinam. Arajaka bayad esha krito raja tad arhana tatopi ashad bayam tvadya katam shat swasti dehinam. Arajaka bayad esha krito raja tad arhana Tatopi ashid bhayam tvadya katam shat swasti dehinam arajaka bhayad esha krito raja tad arhana tatopi asid bhayam tvadya katam shat swasti dehinam arajaka bhayad esha krito raja tad arhana tatopi asid bhayam tvadya katam shat swasti dehinam arajaka bhayad esha krito raja tad arhana tatopi asid bhayam tvadya katam shat swasti dehinam arajaka bhayad esha krito raja tad arhana tatopi asid bhayam tvadya katam swasti dehinam arajaka bhayad esha krito raja tad arhana tatopi asid bhayam tvadya katam shat swasti dehinam arajaka, being without a king, bhayat, out of fear, esha, this vena, krita, was made, raja, the king, atat arhana, though not qualified for it, tataha, from him, api, also, asit, there was, bhayam, danger, tu, then, adya, now, katam, how, syat, can there be, swasti, happiness, dehinam, of the people in general. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Thinking to save the state from irregularity, the sages began to consider that it was due to a political crisis that they made Vena king, although he was not qualified. But alas, now the people were being disturbed by the king himself. Under such circumstances, how could the people be happy? Purport. In Bhagavad Gita 18.5, it is stated that even in the renounced order, one should not give up sacrifice, charity, and penance. The brahmacharis must perform sacrifices, the grihasthas must give in charity, and those in the renounced order of life, the vanaprasthas and sannyasis, must practice penance and austerities. These are the procedures by which everyone can be elevated to the spiritual platform. When the sages and saintly persons saw that King Vena had stopped all these functions, they became concerned about the people's progress. Saintly people preach God consciousness or Krishna consciousness because they are anxious to save the general populace from the dangers of animalistic life. There must be a good government to see that the citizens are actually executing their religious rituals, and thieves and rogues must be curbed. When this is done, the people can advance peacefully in spiritual consciousness and make their lives successful. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, in context, we're reading the pastime of Maharaj Anga and King Vena. So, we'll just do a small recap. Maharaj Anga was disappointed from having a sinful son, King Vena at the time. So he actually renounced his family life. It was the impetus he needed to give up his attachment to his home and family when he had a son that was so disappointing. But then, because he was king, the citizens were left without a ruler. Generally, the son becomes the king, but Vena was not qualified. So, for some time, there was no king, and whenever there's no leadership, that's when criminals come out. The rogues and thieves flourish because there's nobody to govern the citizens. So that's what was happening. The rogues and thieves were flourishing, and then the sages decided, well, we need a king. So they enthroned Vena, even though he's not qualified, because it was an emergency situation. And due to Vena's sinful acts and how cruel he was, the rogues and thieves actually did become curbed. They stopped their activities because they were afraid of this king that's now in power. But the bad result of that is that the king then started terrorizing the citizens. Vena, his power got to his head. He became puffed up. And he was already sinfully inclined. So when a sinful person is put into a position of power, then naturally they abuse the power. So Vena went around and terrorized the citizens and stopped all religious practices. And we know from Shastra that the kings are meant to protect the citizens and make sure that everyone in the kingdom is flourishing spiritually and materially. Everyone must be progressing in life. That is the duty of the king. So when Vena stopped the religious ceremonies and sacrifices, then the sages met again. And they had to now decide what to do, because Vena he's stopping our activities. And then there can be no happiness in the kingdom if there's no spiritual activities, there's no sacrifice. So they were deciding, and later, so this is the point where they're deciding. Later we'll see in the chapter that they tried to pacify Vena with sweet words. They didn't just immediately instruct him. They decided they have to pacify him and try and get him to listen to them. And only when Vena, it proved that he was not going to do that, because he was so contaminated. His mind was so contaminated with ego that he actually compared himself to the Supreme Lord and thought that the sages should worship him instead of the Supreme Lord. And then they decided, no, this can't be done. So they cursed him to die. But we're at the point where they're thinking, what do we do? So that's where we're at. And so the citizens, as we can see from the previous verse, the citizens are trapped in a difficult situation, because on the one side they gave the previous verse describes the citizens as being like ants on a wooden log that's burning on both ends. Because on the one side they'd be terrorized by rogues and thieves, but on the other side they're being terrorized by a bad king. So there's really no solution for them. Vedic society is structured in such a perfect way that there's a duty for everyone to perform. There's the natural divisions of society based on one's inclination and what they're good at and what they're meant to do. there's the Brahmanas, the heads of society. And their duty is to perform spiritual activities, to study the scripture, to live by the scripture and be good examples. And then there's the Kshatriyas, who are the administrators, who are meant to protect the citizens. But they don't do so blindly. They protect the citizens under the guidance of the Brahmanas. Because they have power, they're actually meant to listen to the Brahmanas and take guidance from them on how to run the kingdom such that everyone can be happy both materially and spiritually. And then there's the Vaishyas, who engage in agriculture and cow protection and business. So they are also bringing auspiciousness to the land. That's also the work of Krishna consciousness, to protect the cows, to live off the land, to live simple. So they bring prosperity by those activities. And we actually see that in the modern day, in our farm communities. New Govardhan in Australia comes to mind when I think of a society that is based on protecting the cows and agriculture and seeing the result of how that makes everyone in the society thrive. So the Vaishyas are meant to serve in this way. And then the Sudras are meant to serve the upper classes and be fully taken care of by them. They are not slaves that are treated poorly. They are fully, every need they have is met. But they just perform menial service to the three other classes. So that's how society can successfully exist. And every group is focused on upliftment, on progression. And because the Brahmanas are at the head and they're instructing, the goal is Krishna consciousness. The goal is the spiritual development of everyone in society. So that's the ideal that we get from Shastra. And when that is carried out, we hear from the scriptures about examples of good kings, good leaders. We have Maharaj Parikshit, Yudhishthir Maharaj, so many saintly kings who perfectly perform their duties. I just want to read a bit about what was life like in the kingdom of Maharaj Yudhishthir when he was in charge. In Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st canto, chapter 10, texts 4 to 6. I'll just read the translation. During the reign of Maharaj Yudhishthir, the clouds showered all the water that people needed, and the earth produced all the necessities of man in profusion. Due to its fatty milk bag and cheerful attitude, the cow used to moisten the grazing ground with milk. The rivers, oceans, hills, mountains, forests, creepers, and active drugs in every season paid their tax quota to the king in profusion. Because of the kings having no enemy, the living beings were not at any time disturbed by mental agonies, diseases, or excessive heat or cold. So this is almost like utopia. Can we imagine such a situation where the earth provides anything abundantly? The cows provide, everyone provides, because the earth and the citizens are being protected and cared for, and therefore they are flourishing. This is the situation when a king correctly performs his duty. To say that nobody was even disturbed by mental agonies, diseases, or excessive heat or cold. In chapter 89 of Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki jai, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Shri Giriraj Govardhan ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. In Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, chapter 89, there's the description of this situation in Dwarka. So there was a Brahmana who had a child, and the child died untimely. And he immediately went to the king as if to blame the king, because in that period in Dwapar Yuga, it was expected that nobody would have an untimely death because the king ran everything so perfectly that all the citizens were happy. There was no misfortune to the citizens. So when the child died untimely, then the Brahmana knew something is wrong here. The king must have done something wrong. And then he lost faith in the king and thought, you're not qualified because how did this happen? And this kept happening over and over again with every child. Eventually, Arjuna heard this and thought he didn't want the Brahmana to lose faith in the kingdom. So he said, I will protect your child. And the Brahmana said, how can you protect? In the presence of Krishna, Balaram, and all the kings, my child has died. So what can you do? But Arjuna took a vow that he will enter the blazing fire if he can't protect this child. So on the birth of the next baby, Arjuna did everything, but the child still died. And then Arjuna didn't know what to do. He was going to enter the fire, but Krishna said, no, it's going to look bad on me if you do that. So I will help you. And so Krishna took Arjuna to the edge of the universe, past the Brahmajyoti, and to Mahavishnu. And then Mahavishnu had the children and actually said that, I wanted your darshan, Krishna. Mahavishnu wanted the darshan of Krishna, and that's why he arranged the situation for just to take all the Brahmanas' children so that Krishna would come there and give him darshan. And then when he got the darshan, he released the children, and then they could bring back the children to the Brahmana. But this story illustrates the point that there was no untimely death in a good kingdom, a kingdom with good leadership. So this is what we could expect in the former ages. It was even said that in the kingdom of Lord Ramachandra, the same situation occurred. There's no untimely death, no excessive heat or cold. So we get these good examples from the Shastra of perfect kings. And then we also get a few examples of bad leadership also, like King Vena and practically all the leaders we have today, almost all. If anyone says the Srimad Bhagavatam is not practical, it's not current, they're mistaken, because everything we read about in Srimad Bhagavatam can very easily be practically applied. It's just that the only difference is that in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it was normal to have a good king, and it was abnormal to have King Vena or a sinful king. In our current context, it's the opposite. It's normal to have leadership that's unqualified. And now and then there may be some good leaders in society today. So we know this all too well, especially here. There's when there's strong government, the first result is that the citizens feel safe. That's the most basic need and the most basic duty of the government. But we see that at least here, nobody feels safe. And that's already telling you that there's no strong government. Jadvaita Maharaj speaks about this quite a bit in his lectures, about how there are some Islamic countries that have very strong government because they have very strong punishment for even such an act as stealing. And because they have strong punishment, it doesn't exist. Stealing doesn't happen there. But we have a different situation here. My mom and I were speaking the other day, and we said that even if something happens to us, we would be afraid to approach the police here. We wouldn't feel safe even approaching the police. And we had quite an interesting incident once at our home. We've got some colorful neighbors in our complex who break the regulative principles all the time. Or we previously had them. I don't know if they're still there, but they would have all kinds of parties, there'd be prostitutes coming, there'd be all kinds of, drugs, alcohol, all kinds of sinful activity going on. And the one time, our car was just parked in our parking bay, and a vehicle just bashed into our car. And then we go outside like we didn't do anything. Our car is just parked. And then we realize it's a policeman. It's a drunk policeman that's attending one of these parties. So then, like, where do you take a drunk policeman? You can't take them to the police station because they're friends with all the policemen, you know. So then it became like this confusing thing. How do we deal with such a situation? But that's common, and that's why we can't trust. We don't feel safe. But so there's just utter chaos in a society where we don't feel safe when there's no strong government. And there was also another story Jayadvaita Maharaj related about an engineer who got a task in one of the Islamic countries to build a metro. And the king wanted it on a specific date 2 years from now. He said, I want to be riding this metro on this date in 2 years. And because the king wanted it, all things fell into place. The materials were there, the money was there, whatever was needed, the manpower was there. Whatever was needed to fulfill this king's desire, it was all there because that's how strong his authority was. And 2 years later, metro was built. And then the same engineer had the same task basically in another country. He didn't mention which country. But the situation was very different. There was money allocated, but was used for something else. There were constant delays. They weren't, the materials weren't on time. Nothing was on time. And it was just money moving in different directions for the purpose of this, but not being utilized properly. And then eventually, the deadline was not met. And the engineer asked them, you asked me to do this, but I can't do it because you keep using the money for other things. And then the response from the leader was, what do you care? You're still getting paid. And then that's when he saw that it wasn't about getting the task done. It was about just creating a revenue opportunity to move money around. And that's what happens in bad government with cheaters who have power. They have the resources, they have everything, but they don't utilize it properly. So what can we do, hey? When the world is like this, are we going to fix it? No, because it's not possible. Kadambakanana Swami says, this material world is like a broken car. It's not possible to fix. It's a car that every time you fix one thing, something else breaks. And then you fix that and something else breaks. And all you can do is really just fix it enough to get you home. But it's not going to be a brand new car. It's not going to be fixed. So our position is like that in the material world, where we can't trust the governments, we can't trust anyone, and we can't fix it. We're not going to change the situation here. We have to get out of here. This is our inspiration to really endeavor to get out of this material world. I mean, we read in Srimad Bhagavatam about the description of Kali Yuga. That's another part that made me have faith in the Bhagavatam, that it describes perfectly what Kali Yuga is and what it's going to progress into being later on. So we don't want to stick around to see it. We don't want to see the time when people are eating their children and whatever. We don't want to be part of that. We want to go back home to Krishna, to the spiritual world, and we want to take as many people as possible with us. But if we can't even take anyone, at least take ourselves. That's our first duty and responsibility. So our main duty is to spread Krishna consciousness. If we think about previously, the Brahmanas took this action, this emergency act of cursing King Vena to die in this pastime. That's an emergency. The Brahmanas are generally peaceful, saintly people that don't ever act in violence. Of course, they weren't violent. They could kill someone with mantra, with words, just with curses. They don't need to be physically violent. But Brahmanas generally wouldn't do that. It's only because it was an emergency situation. So in our modern context, we are in an emergency situation. And the saintly men of society, those who are Krishna conscious, have the duty to kill the sinful tendency. And the way we do it here is by preaching Krishna consciousness. Lord Chaitanya came, and his weapon was not to kill everyone, because if he did that in Kali Yuga, then everyone would be dead. Because if he had to kill everyone that was sinful, everyone in Kali Yuga has good and evil in them. Unlike former ages where good and evil were separate, in separate people. So in Kali Yuga, if Lord Chaitanya had to kill everybody that was sinful, then he'd kill everyone. So he didn't do that. His weapon was his beauty and the holy names and spreading Krishna consciousness. That's how he killed the sinful tendency in so many, and that's how he is continuing to kill our sinful tendencies within our hearts. And Srila Prabhupada brought this movement to the West so that people from all over the world have this opportunity to become pure, to have all their sinful inclinations removed and destroyed, and just their pure spiritual essence can be revealed. So that's really our goal here. And we can do it in whatever way we can. There's book distribution is one way, and it's the marathon, so it's a very nice time to get involved and really try to do something. I know we've been trying, but it's been okay. I spoke previously about how, like, it doesn't matter about rejection. Rejection is not such a big deal, and we should just be confident and just touch the pavement and be happy that we're doing our duty. Our duty is to share Krishna consciousness, and we're doing it. But actually, we went to this market last week, and I had such an interesting experience, because I was all talking about rejection to everyone and being like, no, it doesn't matter. But at that market, we didn't even have the opportunity to be rejected because nobody saw us. It was interesting. They put our table in this invisible area practically where nobody ever goes. All the other vendors were in the front getting foot traffic. It was a quieter day because it was raining, but there were still people walking past the other vendors. But we got pushed into this corner where literally nobody can even walk past. And then I thought wow, we're not even getting the opportunity to be rejected here. Like, we cannot even speak to anybody. And then I thought the worst thing on book distribution is not rejection. It's indifference. It's being invisible. It's not being seen. It's like how they say the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. That's how I felt. I was just so miserable because nobody could see us. But then, after some time, we asked to be moved to an area where more people were walking. And then we got the opportunity to be rejected. And it was nice. I was very happy. I was very happy to be rejected because we got to speak to people. There was that interaction. There was exchange. There were so many people I could see that I wish I could connect with them. And I thought if there were some senior devotees around, like Rambakanana Swami, Prabhupada, just so many other senior devotees would know how to connect with every single person in that place. Like the musician, the person selling cannabis, the every kind of person. They'd know just how to interact. And I didn't know. I thought, I'm just here. It's just me. And I don't know how to interact with all these people. But somehow there was some conversations. And people were interested, not so interested in reading, but interested in the topics. And we distributed some prasadam and exchanged some words, which I felt was a win compared to what we were doing before, which was not talking to anyone. So sometimes it's like that. So now I can really feel that I don't mind rejection. I can genuinely say that because I was happy. I was genuinely happy to be rejected just because we could speak to someone. But yeah, that was my book distribution experience so far in this marathon. I pray that it can be better. Pray that we can also not get rejected and actually distribute some books. And I pray that everyone blesses me and our team. But that's really the goal here. Our goal is to preach Krishna consciousness. Another thing that we can take from this pastime is to be conscious of not being like King Vena if we are ever in a position of leadership. And that doesn't just mean in the material world. It means even within our Krishna consciousness society. To have a position of leadership it's a great responsibility, and it's actually, we're meant to see it as being a servant leader, not a leader where I'm in control, I have power. It's a servant leader, which means my duty is to serve those people who are under my shelter or under my care. And that means protecting them. That means not having a hidden agenda or your own agenda, actually. So it's not that every agenda has to be sinful. It's just about having an agenda outside of the protection of the people below you, the people under your care. So that's also a grave responsibility, because the leaders carry the faith of the people under them. I was thinking about authority and what authority means. Authority isn't just a position. When people have faith, then you have authority. People have faith in you and what you're saying and what you're doing and how your actions follow your words, and there's no discrepancies there. Then you automatically have authority. You don't need a position of leadership. Whereas if you have a position of leadership but your actions don't follow your words, then you actually don't have authority, because no one's going to listen to you, even if you are in a position of leadership. So it's important to whoever we are, whether we have a position or not, it's for our actions and words to match. It's for us to follow Dharma, to do the right thing, to do the right thing because it's our duty, not doing what we feel like doing. So doing the right thing, doing our duty, is in the mode of goodness. Doing what we feel like doing is in the mode of passion, and not doing anything is in the mode of ignorance. So we want to come to that position of goodness so that we can at least progress spiritually. And it takes a lot of restraint to do something. It takes a lot of discipline to do something out of duty and not just do what we feel like doing. So that's an important part for all of us, actually, because even if we're not in a position of leadership within the society, if we're preaching Krishna consciousness, we're seen to be a leader to somebody. So as a preacher also, that is a position of leadership in one sense, because we are the example that people are seeing in the world of Srila Prabhupada, of ISKCON, of his movement. So if people see discrepancies in our character and in our behavior, then they're not going to listen to us. They're not going to want to hear what we have to say, even though what we have to say is pure Krishna consciousness. We may not be pure, but what we have to say is pure Krishna consciousness. But if they see that we're vastly different from what we say, our behavior is vastly different, then they're not going to take us seriously. So it's actually very instructive, this pastime. And the pastimes of generally of leadership, we know we can't be perfect. We will always make mistakes, because that is one of the defects of the conditioned souls. But actually, Keshav Maharaj says this amazing, he describes it perfectly. And I think he heard this from Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, if I'm not mistaken. Like, I think he was quoting him. Could be wrong, but this is what I heard from Keshav Maharaj. So he said that there's four defects of the living entity. We all have. Now, the first defect is imperfect senses. There's not much we can do about having imperfect senses. It is the situation of the material body. So we can't do it. That's how it is. And because we have imperfect senses, sometimes we'll be in illusion. We also can't do much about that because that is a result of having imperfect senses. We will be sometimes bewildered, sometimes in illusion. And because we're in illusion, sometimes we will make mistakes. Again, we can't do much about that. We can't do much to stop that because that's one of the defects of the living entity. But when we make mistakes, we do have the choice of whether we're going to cheat or whether we're going to own up to it. And then the last one is the cheating propensity, which is a defect of the living entity. But we can do something about it. We can choose not to cheat. We can make a mistake and be honest about it. So cheating is the only one that we actually have control over. And he says that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, cheating will not be tolerated in our process of Krishna consciousness. So we won't be perfect. And as living entities, it's not possible for us to be perfect. But if we are honest, then people will take us seriously because they're seeing that honesty. Especially now, at least in this generation right now, people really value authenticity and honesty. It's not like previously where maybe it was valued to appear perfect, to appear like a good example, even if we're not. But now, authenticity and honesty is the biggest thing. If people see that you're not doing what you say, that you're dishonest, they will not listen to anything you have to say. But if they see that you make mistakes and you're honest about it, even very grave mistakes, but because they're seeing that you're being honest, they actually respect you. They respect that I can trust this person because they did something so bad, but they're being honest about it. So this is also nice for us to learn in our preaching that we are representing Srila Prabhupada, we're representing our spiritual masters, we're representing this Krishna consciousness movement, and therefore it's good to give people a good impression. Doesn't mean we have to be perfect, but the impression must be good, and then we can say we've offered our best. Is there, I can stop there and we can discuss or have some comments or corrections. Oh, this.
Was good. On? Can you hear me? It was good you pointed out something that shows the problems in how people pick their leaders. Most people, the leaders will promise them so many benefits or so many rights. But the Vedic idea is a duty. That if you do your duty, leaders do their duty, and the workers do their duties, then everyone automatically gets. So if each person is clamoring, like sometimes the politicians say, we're going to increase the benefits and decrease the taxes. That sounds great, but that's the worst thing you can do because now you're earning less and spending more. But people think that's great. And so because people are looking only for their own benefits and don't see the duty-based ethics, so we can train people in that. We can even say that this teaches how to perform duties so that everybody automatically gets their rights. If they're performing their duties, there's not corruption, there's not inefficiency because they learn how to do the duty properly. They don't just fake it. And that's what the Vedas teach, and you pointed out that about the duty-based ethics. We do our duties, automatically people get their rights. You see that doesn't go on in certain places.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Yeah, if everyone in society is doing their duty, and if the king is protecting, then naturally citizens want to pay tax. You know, they'll naturally give they because the king is providing them so much more. You know, the tax is small. Mm.
Realize that if the leader calls, even President Kennedy said, don't ask what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And he was a strong leader that way, and people took to that. You know, so saying that, don't ask what the country can do for you, ask what you can do for the country. And if people thought that way, things change.
Mm.
And if people put Krishna in the center of that, then they really change.
I think Ranga Mataji.
Hare Krishna. So you were talking about rejection, but even those who reject you, because you have left an impression on their minds, they will someday take to Krishna consciousness. Therefore, Sheshika Prabhu says that you should leave a good impression, on people's mind, even if they reject you.
Mm.
Even sweet words, you can just talk sweet words to them.
Yes.
And in that way, you leave a good impression.
Yes, thank you so much, Mataji. That's exactly why I was so happy to be rejected, because at least we were connecting and creating some kind of impression with people as opposed to not doing anything, So I was happy about that. And it is true, because the seeing the book, touching the book gives eternal benefit to them. And they did do that. So at least we can say many books were touched and seen after.
And sometimes people are afraid to say, I don't have money.
Mm.
So they'll just no, they'll walk past you. Maybe I did that sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
when I saw a book distributor, I just said no when I walked past.
Actually, it's my karma, I know, that I get rejected on book distribution, because I am that person that if anyone talks to me when I'm walking in the mall and tries to stop me, I'm immediately, no, I don't care what they're talking about. It could be Krishna consciousness. Before, I would not stop. So I don't blame people for just not stopping. I'm fine with it, because I know I'm the same. And I'm thinking, if I didn't come to Krishna consciousness already, then there's no way a book distributor would be able to convince me and stop me on the street and make me listen to them and actually sell me a book. No. So that's why whenever people do take a book, I'm actually shocked. I'm in shock. Like, they actually bought this book from a random person standing on the street. No.
Yeah.
How did they do that? I wouldn't. So they're already glorious for
Basically, you see Krishna's divine hand in it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Krishna.
I guess there's nothing else we can end there. Antaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanande.